In March 1945, Captain Raymond Holloway took off from a forward airfield in France on what his squadron was told was a routine supply run to Allied units pushing into Germany. His P-38 Lightning never returned. The Army Air Forces declared him killed in action, lost at sea over the North Atlantic. His pregnant wife received the standard telegram and a folded flag. Their son was born 2 months later, never knowing his father. 80 years later, a construction crew breaking ground for a new federal building in Northern Virginia unearthed the twisted wreckage of a P-38, 40 miles from any ocean, with impact damage that told a very different story than lost at sea. And inside the cockpit, investigators found something that would eventually force President Trump to declassify Operation Archway in 2025. Evidence of a mission so secret the military had buried not just the plane, but the truth about how America got the intelligence that helped end the war. Michael Holloway stood in his classroom after the last bell, erasing equations from the whiteboard when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. Virginia area code. Mr. Holloway? This is Dale Pritchard. I'm a construction foreman with Berkshire Development. The voice was rough, hesitant. We're breaking ground on the new federal building out in Culpeper County. Found something today you need to see. Michael kept erasing. I teach history, Mr. Pritchard. If you found artifacts, you want the state archaeologist... Found a plane. Silence. P-38 Lightning, tail number N7-38847. The eraser stopped mid-stroke. Michael's hand went very still against the board. That's impossible. Got the tail number right here in front of me. Ran it through the database, registered to Captain Raymond Holloway, reported lost March 1945. Pritchard's voice softened. Says here you're listed as next of kin. Michael's throat closed up. His grandfather, the man in the photograph on his mother's mantel, forever 28, forever smiling in his flight jacket. Lost at sea. That's what the telegram had said, what the family had believed for 80 years. Where exactly are you? Culpeper. Off Route 29, about 40 miles west of D.C. That's nowhere near the Atlantic. No, sir, it ain't. Michael grabbed his keys. Don't touch anything. I'm coming now. The drive took 50 minutes. Michael's hands stayed locked on the wheel the entire time, knuckles burned white. His mind kept circling back to the same impossible fact. 40 miles inland. The telegram had said North Atlantic. His grandmother had scattered flowers in the ocean every year on the anniversary. Had driven to Virginia Beach with Michael's father when he was a boy, let the waves take the petals out to where she believed her husband rested. All those flowers. All those years. And Raymond had been in Virginia the whole time. The construction site sat on 20 acres of cleared land, surrounded by orange fencing and idle equipment. Michael pulled up to the temporary gate where a security guard checked his license against a list, then waved him through. The sun was dropping toward the tree line, casting long shadows across the torn earth. Dale Pritchard waited by the excavation pit. He was thick-shouldered and gray-bearded, wearing a high-visibility vest and work boots caked with red clay. When he saw Michael approach, he pulled off his hard hat. Mr. Holloway, he extended a hand. Sorry to bring you out here like this. But once we ran that tail number... Michael shook his hand, barely feeling it. His eyes were locked on the pit. 20 feet down, surrounded by barricades and temporary lighting, sat the crumpled remains of a P-38 Lightning. The twin-boom design was unmistakable, even mangled and rusted. One wing had sheared off. The cockpit was crushed inward, nose buried in clay that had held it for 8 decades. Jesus Christ, Michael whispered. Found it around 2 this afternoon. Pritchard moved to the edge of the pit. Bucket went down for foundation work and came up with aluminum. Thought it was debris at first, maybe construction trash from the old days. Then we saw the tail section. Michael couldn't look away. The tail number was still visible through the corrosion. N7-38847. His grandfather's plane. His grandfather's grave. How deep? About 18 feet when we stopped digging. Could be more aircraft below that. Haven't excavated the full site yet. Pritchard cleared his throat. Called it in to the FAA, the Air Force, DOD. They're sending people tomorrow. But I thought, Family should know first. Thank you. Michael's voice came out rough. Can I go down there? Sites technically closed pending investigation, but Pritchard glanced at the security guard who was looking the other way. 5 minutes. Watch your step. Michael climbed down the makeshift ladder into the pit. The clay was still damp from the excavation, smelling of iron and earth. Up close, the P-38 looked even more destroyed. The impact had compressed the fuselage like an accordion. The propellers were twisted into abstract shapes. But the cockpit canopy, though shattered, was still partially intact. Michael moved closer. His boots sank slightly in the clay. That smell of rust and decay filled his nose, made his stomach turn. Through the broken canopy, he could see the pilot's seat, dark stains on the leather, something white wedged against the instrument panel. Bone. His grandfather's body was still in there. Michael's legs went weak. He reached out, steadied himself against the fuselage. The metal was cold and rough under his palm, flaking rust that came away on his skin. 80 years. Raymond Holloway had been sitting in this cockpit, 40 miles from where anyone was looking, while his wife waited for news that never came, while his son grew up with a folded flag and a name on a memorial wall. "Mr. Holloway," Pritchard called from above. "You all right?" Michael didn't answer. He was staring at something else now, something that shouldn't be there. Bullet holes, dozens of them, stitched across the fuselage in a tight pattern. The metal was punctured clean through in places, torn and ragged in others. These weren't from a crash. These were from guns. And the angle was wrong. Michael had studied enough aircraft combat in his history classes to recognize the pattern. These rounds had come from above and behind, raking down the length of the plane. Fighter attack pattern, but American P-38s didn't fly over Virginia in 1945, and German fighters certainly didn't. "Mr. Holloway?" Pritchard's voice held an edge of concern now. "Need to bring you up. Getting dark." Michael forced himself to move. He climbed the ladder slowly, his mind racing. At the top, Pritchard offered a hand and pulled him up onto solid ground. "You saw them," Michael said. It wasn't a question. Pritchard nodded. "Bullet holes. Yeah, I saw them. That plane was shot down. Seems like over Virginia. 40 miles from Dulles Airport. Used to be farmland back in 45. Pritchard crossed his arms. "Don't make much sense, does it?" Michael looked back down at the wreckage, at his grandfather's tomb. The telegram said he was lost at sea. Routine supply run over the North Atlantic. Well? Pritchard spat into the dirt. Somebody lied. Michael pulled out his phone. His hands were shaking slightly as he pulled up his sister's number. Linda answered on the second ring. "Michael? What's wrong?" "They found him," Michael said. "They found Grandpa Raymond." Silence. Then, "What are you talking about?" "Construction site in Culpeper. His plane. He's still in the cockpit." Michael's voice cracked. "Linda, he was never in the ocean. He crashed in Virginia, and somebody shot him down." "That's insane." "I'm looking at it right now. Tail number matches. There's bullet holes in the fuselage." Michael turned away from the pit, lowered his voice. "The military lied to Grandma. They lied to Dad. They've been lying for 80 years. "Michael, slow down. I need to call Uncle Eugene. He needs to know. Uncle Eugene is 91 years old and has a heart condition. You can't just... His brother is in that pit, Linda. He has a right to know." Another silence. Then Linda's voice came back quieter, careful. "What are you going to do?" Michael looked at the P-38, at the crushed cockpit and the bullet holes and the bones of a man who'd been erased from the wrong part of the map. "I'm going to find out what really happened. And then I'm going to make them tell the truth. Michael. They owe him that much. They owe all of us that much." He hung up before she could argue. Pritchard was watching him with something like sympathy. "DOD's sending people tomorrow," the foreman said. "They're going to seal this site up tight. Military doesn't like its secrets dug up. Then I need to see everything before they get here." Michael met his eyes. "Can you get me back in that pit tonight? With a camera?" Pritchard was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Yeah, I can do that. But, Mr. Holloway, whatever you find down there might be things you wish you hadn't. Michael thought about his grandmother scattering flowers into empty waves, thought about his father growing up believing his dad was a hero lost to the sea, thought about 80 years of careful lies. I'll take that risk. Michael returned to the site at midnight with a high-powered flashlight, his phone, and a video camera he'd borrowed from the school's media department. Pritchard met him at the gate with 2 other workers, brothers named Kyle and Mason Webb, both ex-Marines who Pritchard said knew how to keep their mouths shut. We got maybe 4 hours before the DOD advance team shows up, Pritchard said, leading them to the pit. After that, this whole site becomes federal property and we all become trespassers. They'd rigged work lights around the excavation, powered by a portable generator that hummed in the darkness. The P-38 looked even more alien under the harsh illumination, a ghost from another era, torn and bleeding rust. Michael descended first, the camera bag heavy on his shoulder. The clay was colder now, almost slick. His breath came out in visible puffs. March in Virginia could still bite at night. Start with the exterior, Pritchard called down. Document everything before you go inside. Michael circled the wreckage slowly, filming every angle. The bullet holes were more extensive than he'd first thought. The entire left side of the fuselage was perforated, some rounds punching clean through, others lodged in the internal structure. He counted at least 40 distinct impacts. These are .50 caliber, Mason Webb said, crouching beside one of the holes. He'd climbed down behind Michael, was examining the torn metal with a practiced eye. See the diameter? Same rounds our own fighters used. American guns shot this down? Michael kept filming. Can't say for certain without ballistics, but yeah, that's what it looks like. Michael moved to the tail section. The vertical stabilizers were largely intact, the tail number still legible, despite the corrosion. N7-38847. Below it, barely visible under decades of oxidation, was a smaller marking. Michael wiped at it with his sleeve, felt the rust flake away under the fabric. Letters emerged, stenciled in faded white paint. Operation Archway. You getting this? Pritchard asked from above. Yeah. Michael zoomed in on the marking. Operation Archway. Mean anything to you? Never heard of it. Michael photographed it from 3 angles, then moved toward the cockpit. The canopy was shattered, but still partially secured to the frame. Through the gaps he could see the pilot's seat more clearly now. The dark stains weren't just on the leather. They'd soaked into the surrounding metal, dried to a rust brown that was somehow darker than the oxidation. Blood. 80-year-old blood. Going in, Michael said. Be careful. Structures compromised. Michael braced himself against the fuselage and pulled at the canopy frame. It resisted, then gave with a grinding screech of tortured metal. The smell hit him immediately. Not decay, not after 80 years, but something else. Damp earth and old metal and a chemical sweetness he couldn't identify. The cockpit was smaller than he'd imagined. Cramped. His grandfather had sat in this tiny space, hands on controls that were now frozen with rust, eyes on instruments that had shattered on impact. The remains were minimal. Bones, mostly fragmentary, held in place by the compressed wreckage. The skull was intact, tilted forward against the instrument panel. Michael's hands shook as he filmed it. This was Raymond. This was his grandmother's husband, his father's father, the man in the photograph who'd been smiling in his flight jacket, young and alive and certain he'd come home. There's something wedged under the seat, Kyle Webb said. He'd climbed down and was peering in from the other side. Looks like leather. A bag, maybe. Michael leaned closer. Yes, a leather satchel, crushed but still intact, jammed between the seat and the cockpit floor. The kind pilots used for maps and documents. Can you reach it? Hold on. Kyle produced a pry bar from his belt. He worked it carefully into the gap, levering the seat back fraction by fraction. Metal groaned. Something cracked. Michael couldn't tell if it was aircraft or bone. The satchel came free. Kyle passed it out to Michael. It was heavier than expected, the leather stiff and water-damaged, but not rotted through. A brass buckle, green with patina, still held the flap closed. "Open it!" Pritchard called down. Michael's fingers fumbled with the buckle. It resisted, then gave. He lifted the flap. Inside, papers. Yellowed, brittle, but readable. Michael pulled out the first document carefully, angled it toward the light. It was a mission briefing, typed on Army Air Force's letterhead, dated March 15, 1945. Classification stamp at the top. Top secret. Archway. Michael's throat went tight as he read. The objective was clear: intercept and extract an asset code-named Nightingale from Paris. The asset carried intelligence on the German V-2 program, rockets targeting Allied staging areas as Germany prepared for its final desperate defense. Extraction window was narrow, just 1 hour between 3 and 4 in the morning. Radio silence was mandatory, and if anyone asked, Raymond was flying a routine supply run to forward units. Michael looked up. He was flying into occupied France in March 1945. Paris was liberated in August 44, Mason said. Wasn't occupied in March 45. Then why does this say? Michael stopped. Read it again. The date on the document was March 15th, but there was another date handwritten in the margin, March 17th, 1945. 2 days later. Mission got delayed, Kyle said, reading over his shoulder. Or changed. Michael shuffled through more papers, radio transcripts, code sequences, a photograph of a man in civilian clothes, thin-faced and nervous-looking. Handwritten on the back, Nightingale, German defector, rocket engineer. Another document, this one stamped, Priority. Nightingale compromise confirmed. Gestapo arrest, 16th of March. Asset presumed executed. Mission status, abort. Michael's hands went numb. The defector was dead before my grandfather even took off. Keep reading, Pritchard said quietly. The next page was another mission briefing. Same date, March 17th, but different orders. Revised objective. Recover Nightingale materials from dead drop location. Intelligence too valuable to abandon. High risk of enemy interception. Proceed with extreme caution. They sent him anyway. Michael's voice was barely a whisper. Knew the defector was dead, knew it was compromised, and they sent him anyway. More papers. A map with coordinates marked. Another photo, this one showing a leather briefcase, the kind couriers carried. Handwritten note, contents, V-2 targeting data, launch site coordinates, fuel mixture specifications. Critical. Do not allow enemy recovery. He got it, Mason said. Look at the next page. It was a radio transcript. Timestamp, 0347 hours, 17 March, 1945. The words were typed, sterile, but Michael could hear the desperation bleeding through decades of silence. Package secured, Raymond had radioed, proceeding to extraction point. Heavy resistance, taking fire. Base command responded immediately. Evade and return to base. Acknowledge, then static. Bursts of interference that couldn't hide the panic in Raymond's next transmission. I'm hit. Losing altitude. Can't maintain. Archway 1, confirm your position. More static. Then Raymond's final words, breaking through the interference. Over friendly territory. Going down. After that, nothing. Just empty silence where a man's voice had been. Michael's chest hurt. He realized he'd been holding his breath. He made it back. He got the intelligence and made it back to friendly territory. But he didn't make it home, Kyle said. Michael flipped through the remaining documents. More radio logs, debriefing notes. And then, near the bottom of the satchel, a folded letter. Personal stationery, not military. The paper was fragile, threatening to crumble at his touch. He unfolded it carefully. My dearest Margaret, if you're reading this, I didn't make it home. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. They told me this mission was critical, that the intelligence could save thousands of lives. I believe them. I have to believe them. Our child will be born in 2 months. I wish I could be there. I wish I could see you one more time. Tell our son or daughter that their father loved them. Tell them I thought about them every day. Tell them I died doing something that mattered. All my love, forever. Raymond Michaels' vision blurred. He wiped at his eyes roughly, smearing dirt across his face. His grandmother's name, Margaret. She'd died when Michael was 16, had lived 68 years as a widow, believing her husband was at the bottom of the Atlantic. And Raymond had written this letter knowing he might die, had carried it with him into a mission that was already compromised. "There's more," Pritchard said from above. His voice was tight. "In the bag." Bottom corner. Michael reached in, felt something small and hard. He pulled it out. A wedding ring, gold, tarnished black, engraved on the inside, M and R, always. His grandmother's ring, the one she'd given Raymond before deployment. The one she'd told Michael's father had been lost with the plane, somewhere in the ocean. It had been here, 40 miles inland, the whole time. Michael closed his fist around the ring. The metal was cold and solid, real in a way nothing else in this pit felt real. Around him, the wreckage seemed to press closer. The work lights cast harsh shadows. The generator hummed its monotonous note. "Mr. Holloway," Mason said carefully, "you need to see this." He was holding another document, this one near the back of the satchel. Not a mission briefing, not a letter. It looked like an after-action report, typed on the same Army Air Force's letterhead. Classification, top secret, Archway, eyes only. Michael took it, read the first paragraph, then the second. His hands started shaking so badly he almost dropped it. Mission outcome, Archway. One successfully recovered Nightingale materials containing V2 targeting intelligence. Intelligence proved accurate and actionable. Based on recovered data, Allied Command launched preemptive strikes on 12 V2 launch sites 19th to 22nd March 1945, destroying critical infrastructure and preventing planned German attack on Allied staging areas. Estimated 3,000-plus Allied lives saved. Pilot status. Captain Raymond Holloway killed in action during extraction. Aircraft went down over friendly territory, Virginia, USA, following apparent mechanical failure. Body and aircraft located, removed, and interred at undisclosed location to maintain operational security. Cover story implemented. Family notified of combat loss over North Atlantic. Standard KIA protocols followed. No mention of Operation Archway to be made. Classification to remain in effect indefinitely. Michael read it 3 times. The words didn't change. "They found him," he said. His voice sounded strange, distant. "They found the crash. They found his body, and they buried it all. Told his wife he was lost at sea. Told his son. Told everyone. Because they couldn't admit how they got the intelligence," Kyle said. "Couldn't explain what he was doing flying over Virginia when he was supposed to be on a supply run." 3,000 lives. Michael looked at the document again. They saved 3,000 lives with what he brought back. "And then they erased him," Pritchard said quietly from above. Michael carefully gathered the documents, replacing them in the satchel. His hands moved automatically, his mind elsewhere. He thought about his grandmother, scattering flowers in the ocean. Thought about his father, who'd joined the Air Force because of a father he'd never met, a hero lost to the sea. Thought about 80 years of lies built on top of a sacrifice nobody was allowed to acknowledge. The anger came slowly, building like pressure behind his ribs. Raymond had died, bringing back intelligence that saved thousands. Had crashed on home soil, probably wounded, probably terrified, knowing he'd made it back but wouldn't make it home. And the military had found him, had recovered his body, and had buried him in an unmarked grave somewhere so they could maintain their operational security. "We need to get out of here," Mason said suddenly. "Listen." Michael heard it then, distant but growing closer. "Helicopters." "That's not the advance team," Pritchard said. "That's military. Coming in fast." "How much time?" 5 minutes, maybe less." Michael grabbed the satchel. "I'm taking this." "They'll arrest you." "They buried my grandfather and lied about it for 80 years. They can try to arrest me." Michael climbed toward the ladder. Get me out of this pit, now." Kyle and Mason scrambled up first, then helped pull Michael up. The helicopter sounds were louder now, definitely multiple aircraft. Searchlights swept across the tree line to the east. "Go," Pritchard said, shoving Michael toward his car. "Get gone before they land. We'll tell them you left hours ago." Michael ran. The satchel banged against his hip, heavy with evidence and secrets and his grandfather's last words. Behind him, the helicopters descended on the construction site, their rotors kicking up dust and loose earth. He made it to his car, threw the satchel in the passenger seat, and accelerated toward the gate. The security guard was already gone, had probably run when he'd heard the helicopters coming. Smart man. Michael hit Route 29 doing 70, his hands locked on the wheel. In the rearview mirror, he could see the searchlights converging on the excavation site. They'd secure the area. They'd remove the wreckage. They'd probably bury it all again, deeper this time, somewhere nobody would ever find it. But they wouldn't get the documents. They wouldn't get the letter. They wouldn't get his grandmother's ring, now sitting in Michael's pocket, cold and heavy and real. The anger had settled into something colder now, something patient. Michael pulled out his phone at a red light and called Linda. "It's 4 a.m. "I need the name of a good lawyer," Michael said. "Someone who handles FOIA, requests and government transparency. Someone who's not afraid of the Department of Defense." "Michael, what did you do?" "I found proof. Documents. A classified operation they've been hiding since 1945. He took a breath. "And I'm going to make them admit what they did to Grandpa Raymond." Silence. Then, "How bad is this going to get?" Michael thought about the helicopters, about federal agents probably already searching the site, about the weight of classified documents sitting beside him. "Pretty bad." "I'll make some calls," Linda said. "Don't talk to anyone until I get you representation." "Michael, be careful." Too late for careful. He hung up and kept driving. The sun was starting to rise over the Virginia hills, turning the sky pale gold. Somewhere behind him, the military was securing their secret again. But they'd moved too slow this time. 80 years too slow. Michael's phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. "Return the documents immediately. Federal property. This is your only warning." They'd gotten his number from the site records, probably already knew where he lived, where he worked. Michael deleted the message and kept driving. His grandmother had died believing her husband was at the bottom of the ocean. His father had grown up with that same belief. 3 generations of Holloways living with a carefully constructed lie. Not anymore. Michael turned toward home, toward whatever came next. The satchel sat in the passenger seat like a time bomb, which he supposed it was. Operation Archway was about to become very public. Michael didn't go home. He drove to his sister's house in Arlington, arriving just after 6 in the morning. Linda opened the door in her bathrobe, hair pulled back, eyes sharp with worry. "Inside, now!" She pulled him through the doorway, locked it behind him. "There's a black SUV parked 3 houses down. Been there since 5:30. Michael moved to the window, peered through the blinds. The SUV sat under a streetlight, windows tinted, engine running, government plates. "They're not even trying to hide," he said. "Why would they?" "You stole classified documents from a federal site." Linda crossed her arms. "What the hell were you thinking?" "I was thinking our grandfather deserved better than being erased." Michael set the satchel on her dining table. "I was thinking 80 years was long enough." Linda stared at the bag like it might explode. "Is that mission briefings? Radio transcripts?" "A letter Grandpa Raymond wrote to Grandma before he died." Michael's voice cracked slightly. "Her wedding ring?" He had it with him when he crashed. Linda's face went pale. She sat down heavily in one of the dining chairs. "Oh, God." "They found his body, Linda. Found the crash site, and they buried it all to keep the operation secret." Michael pulled out the after-action report, slid it across the table. "Read it." She did. Her hands trembled as she turned the page. When she finished, she looked up at him with something between horror and disbelief. They saved 3,000 lives with his intelligence. And then pretended he never brought it back. Because they couldn't explain what he was doing over Virginia? Linda read it again. Jesus Christ, Dad spent his whole life believing, I know. And Grandma. She scattered flowers every year. I know. Michael's throat was tight. That's why I took these documents. That's why I'm going to make this public. Linda was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood, moved to the window, looked out at the SUV. I called someone. Defense attorney handles whistleblower cases. She's good. Got an NSA analyst acquitted 3 years ago. She's coming at 8. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Michael, this isn't just about Grandpa Raymond anymore. You're in possession of stolen classified material. They can prosecute you under the Espionage Act. For exposing an 80-year-old lie? The classification doesn't expire just because time passed. Operation Archway is still listed as active. She turned back to him. Which means someone, somewhere, still cares about keeping it secret. Michael hadn't considered that. He looked down at the satchel, at the documents that had sat buried with his grandfather for 8 decades. What could possibly still be sensitive after all this time? His phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Last chance. Return documents to DoD liaison at 1400 hours or face federal charges. They're giving me until 2 o'clock, Michael said. That's actually good. Means they want to negotiate before this gets messy. Linda moved to her kitchen, started making coffee. The lawyer will know how to handle this. But Michael, you need to be prepared for the possibility that the truth stays buried anyway. Not this time. They've kept it hidden for 80 years. You think they'll just let you walk into a press conference because it's the right thing to do? Michael thought about the helicopters descending on the construction site, about the SUV parked down the street, about classified stamps and operational security, and 3,000 lives saved by intelligence no one could acknowledge. Linda was right. The military had too much invested in this secret. But they'd made one mistake. They'd let him walk away with proof. The lawyer arrived at 8 sharp. Her name was Diana Reeves, early 50s, gray suit, briefcase that probably cost more than Michael's car. She shook his hand with a grip like a vice, then sat down at Linda's dining table and opened the satchel without ceremony. Don't touch anything else, she said, pulling on latex gloves. If these documents are authentic classified material, we need to establish proper chain of custody. She read through the mission briefings methodically, making notes on a legal pad. Her expression never changed, perfectly neutral, professionally detached. When she reached Raymond's letter to Margaret, her pen stopped moving for just a moment. Then she continued. 20 minutes later, she set down the last document and looked at Michael. This is legitimate. Classification markings match period standards, letterhead is correct, signatures appear authentic. She folded her hands on the table. Which means you are currently in violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 793, gathering, transmitting, or losing defense information. That carries up to 10 years per document. I didn't steal them. I recovered them from my grandfather's crash site. Crash site on federal land, from an aircraft that was government property containing documents that remain classified. Reeves's voice was firm, but not unkind. Legally, this is theft of government property and unauthorized possession of classified material. The fact that your grandfather died doesn't change that. Michael's hands clenched into fists under the table. So what? They just get away with it? With lying to my family for 80 years? I didn't say that. Reeves pulled out her phone, opened a voice recording app. I need you to tell me exactly what happened. Everything. Don't leave anything out. Michael talked for 40 minutes. The construction site, the bullet holes, the satchel. The after-action report that proved the military had found Raymond's body and buried it. Reeves recorded it all, occasionally stopping him to clarify details. When he finished, she turned off the recorder. Here's our situation. The DoD wants these documents back. They're willing to negotiate because prosecuting you creates publicity they don't want. Nobody likes stories about the military lying to grieving families. She tapped her pen against the legal pad. But they're also not going to let you walk away with classified material, and they're certainly not going to declassify Operation Archway just because you asked nicely. Then what's the play? We file a Freedom of Information Act request for all documents related to Operation Archway and Captain Raymond Holloway. Force them to either declassify or explain in court why an 80-year-old operation still requires secrecy. Reeves leaned back in her chair. It'll take months, maybe years, but it's the legal route. That's too slow. It's the route that doesn't end with you in federal prison. Michael stood, paced to the window. The SUV was still there. He wondered if they had listening equipment pointed at Linda's house. Probably. They knew he was here. They were just waiting. There's another option, Reeves said carefully. We return the documents, you sign a non-disclosure agreement, and this all goes away. Your grandfather's service record gets a quiet upgrade to Medal of Honor, posthumous. The family receives compensation. Nobody goes to prison. And the lie continues. The lie continues. Reeves didn't sugarcoat it. But you and Linda stay out of federal court, and Raymond gets some measure of recognition, even if it's classified. Linda was watching him from the kitchen, coffee cup frozen halfway to her mouth. Michael could see the question in her eyes. Is the truth worth risking everything? He thought about his grandmother, scattering flowers into empty waves. About his father, who'd joined the Air Force to honor a memory built on lies. About Raymond himself, sitting in that crushed cockpit for 80 years, his sacrifice erased by the same government he'd died serving. No, Michael said. No deal. Michael, Linda started. They don't get to bury him twice. Michael turned to Reeves. File the FOIA request, all of it, every document related to Operation Archway, and I want to talk to the press. That's incredibly risky. They've been covering this up since 1945. The only way to stop them is to make it too public to hide. Michael moved back to the table, looked down at his grandfather's letter. Raymond died believing he was doing something that mattered. The least I can do is make sure people know that. Reeves was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. All right, but we do this smart. No interviews until we have the FOIA request filed. No posting on social media. Everything goes through me. She started gathering the documents back into the satchel. And these need to go somewhere secure, not your house, not Linda's. Somewhere the DOD can't just kick down the door and take them. Where? I have a safe deposit box at a bank in Maryland. We'll scan everything first, create encrypted backups, then secure the originals. She checked her watch. The DOD wants the documents returned by 2 o'clock. We're not going to make that deadline, which means things are about to get very uncomfortable for you. Michael's phone buzzed again. Another text. Deadline moved to 1200 hours. Comply or face immediate arrest. They're getting nervous, Linda said, reading over his shoulder. Move the deadline up. Good. Let them be nervous. Michael looked at Reeves. What happens when I don't show up at noon? They'll probably arrest you. Hold you for questioning, try to pressure you into returning the documents. Reeves stood, started packing her briefcase. But they can't hold you long without charging you, and they don't want to charge you publicly. Creates too many questions. So we're playing chicken. More or less. The DOD is betting you'll crack under pressure. We're betting they'll crack first when they realize you're willing to go public. She headed for the door, then stopped. Michael, there's something else you should know. The after-action report mentions Raymond's body being interred at undisclosed location. That means somewhere there's an official grave, probably in a military cemetery, probably under a false name or sealed record. Michael's chest went tight. You think we can find it? If we can get the FOIA request through, maybe, but it'll be buried deep. They've had 80 years to hide the paperwork. She opened the door, glanced at the SUV down the street. I'll be in touch. Don't leave Linda's house. Don't talk to anyone. And for God's sake, don't open the door if anyone claiming to be federal agents shows up. She left. Michael watched her walk to her car, briefcase in hand, containing scanned copies of every document from the satchel. The SUV's engine revved slightly as she drove past. They were definitely watching. Linda locked the door behind Reeves, then turned to Michael. "You're sure about this?" "No," Michael admitted, "but I'm doing it anyway. Dad would have wanted the truth. Dad deserved the truth." Michael moved away from the window, sat heavily on Linda's couch. The adrenaline that had kept him going since midnight was starting to fade. He felt exhausted, hollowed out. "Do you remember Grandma's funeral?" "Of course." She was holding that photo of Grandpa Raymond, the one from his deployment, and she kept saying, "I'll see you soon." Michael's voice broke. She thought she was going to see him again. Thought he was waiting for her somewhere, but he wasn't in the ocean, Linda. He was 40 miles inland, in an unmarked grave, and she never knew. Linda sat beside him. After a moment, she took his hand. "We'll find him. We'll bring him home properly this time. If the DOD doesn't bury us first, then we'll take them down with us." She squeezed his hand. "You're not alone in this, Michael. Whatever happens." His phone buzzed. Different number this time. Michael almost ignored it, then saw the Virginia area code. He answered. "Mr. Holloway?" Pritchard's voice was tight, urgent. "You need to know, they arrested me and the Webb brothers, brought us in for questioning about the excavation. They're treating the whole site like a crime scene." "Jesus, Dale, I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry, just be smart. They asked about you about 20 times. Wanted to know what you took, where you went, if you made copies." Pritchard lowered his voice. "I didn't tell them anything. Neither did Kyle or Mason. But Mr. Holloway, they're coming for you hard, and they've got resources we can't fight." "Did they say anything about the plane? About what they're doing with it?" "They're moving it. Tonight, disassembling the wreckage, transporting it somewhere. By morning, there won't be any evidence that crash site ever existed." Michael's stomach dropped. "They're destroying it." "Not destroying. Disappearing. Same thing they did 80 years ago." Pritchard paused. "Whatever you're planning, do it fast. Once that plane is gone, it's just your word against theirs. And they've got 80 years of practice lying about this." "Thank you, Dale. For everything. Find the truth, Mr. Holloway. Make it mean something." The line went dead. Michael looked at Linda. "They're erasing the crash site, moving the wreckage tonight. Then we're out of time." "Yeah." Michael stood, started pacing. His mind was racing now, calculating options. They couldn't wait for FOIA requests or legal proceedings. The DOD was moving fast, covering tracks. In 24 hours, Operation Archway would be buried again, deeper than before, unless Michael moved faster. He pulled out his phone, opened his contacts, found the number for a journalist he'd met at a Veterans Remembrance event 2 years ago. Paul something. Worked for the Washington Post, covered defense and military affairs. "Michael, what are you doing?" Linda asked. "Something stupid?" He hit call before he could change his mind. Paul answered on the third ring. "This is Garrison." "Paul Garrison?" "This is Michael Holloway. We met at the Arlington Cemetery event in 2023. I'm a history teacher." "I remember. What can I do for you, Michael?" Michael took a breath. "How would you like the story of a classified military operation from 1945 that the DOD has been covering up for 80 years, including documents, a crashed aircraft, and proof that they lied to a Gold Star family?" Silence. Then, "I'm listening." "I need it published today. Tonight, if possible, before the evidence disappears." "That's not how journalism works. I need time to verify, fact-check. The DOD is moving the crash site tonight. By tomorrow, there won't be physical evidence." Michael gripped the phone tighter. "I have mission briefings, radio transcripts, an after-action report that proves they covered it up. I have my grandfather's letter to his pregnant wife, and I have Diana Reeves as my attorney, so you know this is legitimate." Another pause. "Diana Reeves is representing you?" "Yes." "Then this is real." Garrison's voice changed, became sharper. "Where are you?" "Arlington, my sister's house." "Stay there." I'm coming now. And Michael, don't talk to anyone else. Not the DOD, not other press, nobody. If this is what you say it is, this is the kind of story that ends careers, theirs and potentially yours. I know. Do you? Because once this goes public, there's no taking it back. Your life changes permanently. Michael looked at the dining table where the satchel had sat, containing 80 years of carefully maintained lies. Thought about his grandmother's flowers drifting on empty waves. About his grandfather's bones, crushed in a cockpit 40 miles from where anyone was looking. My life changed the moment they buried my grandfather and lied about it, Michael said. Now I'm just returning the favor. Paul Garrison arrived 90 minutes later with a photographer named Chen and a legal consultant who introduced herself only as from the paper's counsel office. They sat up at Linda's dining table like they were preparing for war. "Show me everything," Garrison said. Michael had printed the scanned documents Reeves had made before leaving. He spread them across the table, mission briefings, radio transcripts, the after-action report, Raymond's letter to Margaret, the photograph of the briefcase marked critical. Garrison read in silence, making notes. Chen photographed each document with professional precision. The legal consultant examined classification markings, checking them against something on her tablet. "These are authentic," she said finally. "Watermarks match period standards. Classification protocols are correct for 1945. She looked at Garrison. "If we publish, DOD will come after us hard." "Let them." Garrison held up the after-action report. "They admitted they found the body. Admitted they covered it up. This isn't speculation. This is their own documentation. The Espionage Act doesn't apply to journalism when it's clearly in the public interest. Supreme Court settled that in Pentagon Papers." Garrison turned to Michael. "But you're not a journalist. They can still prosecute you." "I know. And you're doing this anyway?" Michael thought about his grandmother, about his father, about 80 years of flowers scattered in the wrong ocean. "Yeah." Garrison nodded slowly. "All right. We run it tonight, online edition first. Front page of the print edition tomorrow." He checked his watch. "That gives us 6 hours to write, fact-check, and get it past editorial." "The DOD will try to stop you," the legal consultant said. "They can try." Garrison started typing on his laptop. "Chen, I need photos of the crash site. Can we get there?" "It's locked down. Federal agents everywhere by now." "Then we use what Michael filmed last night." Garrison looked at Michael. "You did film it, right?" "Everything. The plane, the bullet holes, the cockpit." Michael pulled out his phone. "And I got video of the tail number, Operation Archway marking." "Perfect. Send it to Chen." Michael's phone buzzed while he was transferring files. Text from unknown number. "Final warning. Federal agents en route to your location. Surrender documents immediately." He showed it to Garrison. "How long do we have?" the journalist asked. "Maybe 20 minutes, maybe less." "Then we work fast." Garrison kept typing. "Michael, I need quotes, on record, about your family, your grandmother, what this means to you." Michael talked while Garrison typed. About Margaret Holloway scattering flowers every year. About his father joining the Air Force to honor a memory built on lies. About finding his grandfather's wedding ring in a satchel that should have been at the bottom of the Atlantic. His voice cracked when he got to Raymond's letter. Garrison didn't stop typing. 15 minutes later, a car pulled up outside. Black sedan, government plates. 2 men in suits got out. "They're here," Linda said from the window. "Keep them outside." Garrison didn't look up from his laptop. "We need 5 more minutes." Linda moved to the door. Michael heard her voice through the walls, firm and cold. "Do you have a warrant?" "Then you're not coming in." The legal consultant was on her phone now, speaking rapidly. "We're going to need the legal team." "Yes, tonight. DOD is already pushing back." Michael watched through the window as more cars arrived. 4 vehicles now, maybe 8 agents. They weren't forcing their way in, not yet, but the message was clear. The walls were closing. "Done," Garrison said. "Articles filed. Editorial is reviewing now." "How long until it publishes?" Michael asked. Hour, maybe 2. Depends how fast editorial moves. Garrison started packing his laptop. But it's in the system now. They can't stop it. Someone knocked on the door. Hard, official. Mr. Holloway, this is Special Agent Vance with DOD Criminal Investigative Service. We need to speak with you about stolen federal property. Linda didn't open the door. My brother has legal representation. All inquiries go through his attorney. Ma'am, we can obtain a warrant. Then obtain one. Until then, he's not speaking with you. Michael's phone rang. Reeves. They're outside Linda's house, Michael said. I know. I'm 10 minutes away. Do not open that door. Do not speak to them. Her voice was sharp, controlled. And Michael? The FOIA request is filed. It's official now. Whatever happens next, the legal process has started. Garrison's publishing tonight. Silence. Then, Jesus Christ. You couldn't wait? The crash site disappears tonight. Had to move fast. Then we're committed. I'll be there in 8 minutes. Do not engage with federal agents without me present. She hung up. The knocking came again. Mr. Holloway, you're making this harder than it needs to be. We just want to talk. Garrison was filming through the window now, Chen beside him with a professional camera. This is good footage, the journalist muttered. Federal agents harassing family of deceased veteran. This plays well. This isn't a game, Linda snapped. No, it's a story. And right now, the optics are on your side. Garrison kept filming. DOD sending agents to intimidate a Gold Star family? That's not a good look for them. Michael's phone buzzed. Email notification from Washington Post. Your story is live. He opened the link with shaking hands. Headline: 80 Years of Lies, How the Military Buried a Hero and Lied to His Family. Subhead: Classified documents reveal Captain Raymond Holloway died completing secret mission, then DOD covered it up. There was the photo of Raymond in his flight jacket, the image of the crashed P-38, scans of the mission briefings with classification stamps visible, and the letter, Raymond's final words to Margaret, printed for the world to see. Michael's chest went tight. This was real now, irreversible. It's published, he said quietly. Garrison checked his phone, smiled. Already getting traction. 6,000 views in 2 minutes. The knocking stopped. Michael heard voices outside, urgent and angry. Someone was on a phone, speaking rapidly, then car doors slamming, engines starting, 2 of the vehicles pulled away. They're leaving? Linda moved to the window. Why are they leaving? Because the story's public now, Garrison said. Arresting Michael becomes a PR nightmare, makes them look like they're retaliating against a whistleblower. They'll still come after him, the legal consultant said. Just more carefully. Reeves's car pulled up. She got out, briefcase in hand, and walked straight to the remaining agents. Michael couldn't hear the conversation, but he watched her body language, aggressive, confrontational. Pointing at the house, then at the agents, then pulling out her phone like she was ready to call someone important. The agents left. Reeves came inside. They wanted to search the house. I told them they'd need a warrant and that any attempt to enter would be considered harassment of a whistleblower now that the story's public. She looked at Garrison. You published? 2 minutes ago? Then we're past the point of no return. Reeves set her briefcase on the table, pulled out a folder. Michael, you need to understand what happens now. DOD will launch an investigation. They'll try to prosecute you for possession of classified material. We'll fight it, argue public interest and whistleblower protections, but it's going to be ugly. I know. Your life is about to become very complicated. Media attention, legal proceedings, probably threats. She met his eyes. Are you prepared for that? Michael thought about Raymond, sitting in a crushed cockpit for 80 years while his family believed a lie. Thought about Margaret, dying without ever knowing the truth. Thought about his father, who'd built his whole identity around a story that wasn't real. Yeah, Michael said. I'm prepared. His phone started ringing. News outlets, probably. He silenced it. Garrison was already on his laptop again, reading comments on the article. This is blowing up. 20,000 views now. People are angry. Good, Michael said. They should be. Linda was still at the window, watching the street. There's still one car out there. They're not all gone. They're watching, Reeves said, documenting who comes and goes, building their case. She turned to Garrison. How much did you publish? Everything Michael gave us. Mission briefings, radio transcripts, the after-action report, the letter. Then they can't claim national security anymore. It's public information now. Reeves almost smiled. You just made it very difficult for them to prosecute. They'll still try, the legal consultant said. Of course they will. But now they have to do it in public view. Reeves started unpacking documents from her briefcase. Which brings us to Phase 2. We find Raymond's actual grave. The after-action report says undisclosed location. That means military cemetery, probably sealed records. We need to force them to tell us where he's really buried. Michael felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't just about exposing the lie anymore. This was about bringing his grandfather home. How do we do that? He asked. Court order. We file for access to Raymond's complete military records, including burial location. They'll fight it, but with the story public, they're under pressure to cooperate. Reeves pulled out a map of military cemeteries on the East Coast. My guess? Somewhere close to where he crashed. Easier to maintain secrecy if the grave is local. Arlington? Linda asked. Possibly. Or one of the smaller national cemeteries in Virginia. Reeves marked several locations on the map. We'll need to check burial records for March-April 1945. Look for unidentified remains or false names. Michael's phone was still buzzing with calls. He glanced at the screen. Local news, then CNN, then someone from NBC. The story was spreading fast. You should answer those, Garrison said. Control the narrative. Tell your story. Later. Michael looked at the map, at the circles Reeves had drawn around possible grave sites. First, I need to find my grandfather. By midnight, the article had 500,000 views. By morning, it was everywhere. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, even international outlets. Michael's phone had become unusable, flooded with calls and messages. He'd turned it off around 2 a.m. and hadn't turned it back on. He sat at Linda's kitchen table, drinking cold coffee and watching the sun rise over Arlington. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the crushed cockpit, the bullet holes, his grandfather's bones pressed against the instrument panel. You need to see this, Linda said, bringing her laptop to the table. She'd been monitoring news coverage all night. DOD just released a statement. Michael read it on the screen. The Department of Defense acknowledges the recent publication of documents related to a 1945 classified operation. We are conducting a thorough review of the circumstances surrounding Captain Raymond Holloway's death and the subsequent handling of his remains. We take seriously our obligation to Gold Star families and are committed to transparency within the bounds of national security. That's it? Michael's voice was flat. That's their response? It's a non-apology apology, Linda said. Admits nothing, promises vague review, blames national security. They're stalling. Of course they are. But look at the comments. She scrolled down. Thousands of responses, most of them angry. People demanding answers, calling for investigations, sharing their own stories of military families lied to. You started something, Michael. People are paying attention. Reeves arrived at 7 with breakfast sandwiches and a trial strategy. She spread documents across the table while Michael ate without tasting anything. I've filed 3 motions, she said. First, access to Raymond's complete military file. Second, disclosure of burial location. Third, declassification of all Operation Archway materials. She tapped each document. They'll fight all 3, but the public pressure helps us. Senators are already asking questions. How long, Michael asked. Months, realistically. Federal courts move slowly, and DOD will delay as much as possible. Reeves pulled out another folder. But I found something interesting. Burial records from Arlington National Cemetery, March-April 1945. There's a grave marked Unknown Service Member, dated March 19, 1945. 2 days after Raymond crashed. Michael's hand stopped moving. That's him. Maybe. Could be coincidence. But the timing fits, and Arlington would make sense. Close to D.C., easy to maintain secrecy. Reeves slid a cemetery map across the table. Section 34, row 12. The grave has no name, no marker beyond a standard stone. Can we go there? It's a public cemetery. Anyone can visit. Reeves met his eyes. But Michael, even if it's him, we can't exhume without a court order. That'll take time. I just want to see it. I just want to know where he's been all these years. Linda drove him to Arlington. They parked near the visitor center and walked through rows of white headstones, thousands of them, stretching across the green hills. The morning was cold and bright, frost still clinging to the grass. Section 34 was in the older part of the cemetery, where the graves dated back to World War II. Michael counted rows until he reached number 12. Then he walked along the stones, reading dates. March 1945, April 1945, February 1945. There, a simple white marble stone, smaller than the others. No name engraved. Just Unknown Service Member. March 19, 1945. Michael's legs went weak. He knelt in the frost-damp grass, reached out with shaking fingers, and touched the cold marble. 80 years. His grandfather had been here the whole time, 15 miles from where Michael had grown up. 15 miles from where Margaret had lived and died, believing her husband was at the bottom of the ocean. "Grandpa Raymond," Michael whispered. His voice broke. "I found you. I'm so sorry it took this long." Linda knelt beside him, put a hand on his shoulder. Neither of them spoke. Around them, the cemetery was quiet, except for wind moving through the trees and the distant sound of morning traffic. Michael thought about his grandmother bringing flowers to Virginia Beach every year. Thought about his father, who'd been buried 3 rows over from this spot in 2019, never knowing his father was so close. Thought about all the times he'd visited Dad's grave without realizing Raymond was right there. The anger came back, cold and sharp. They'd been this close. The family had been coming to this cemetery for 5 years, honoring Michael's father, and the military had let them walk past Raymond's grave without saying a word. "We're bringing you home properly," Michael said to the stone. "I promise, with your name, with the truth, with everything you deserved 80 years ago." His phone buzzed in his pocket. He'd turned it back on for the drive. Text from an unknown number, but this one felt different. "Mr. Holloway, my name is Eugene Brennan. My father was Captain Howard Brennan, Raymond's co-pilot on Operation Archway. We need to talk." Michael's blood went cold. He showed the message to Linda. "Raymond flew P-38s," she said slowly. "They're single-seat fighters." "No co-pilot." "Exactly." Michael stood, brushed frost from his knees. "Someone's lying, either this message or the military records." He called the number. A man answered immediately. Elderly voice, slight tremor. "Mr. Holloway? Who are you really?" "I told you." "Eugene Brennan." "My father flew with yours on March 17th, 1945. The old man paused. "Your article yesterday? That's not the whole story. There's more you need to know." "The records say Raymond flew alone." "The official records, yes, but there were 2 planes that night, Mr. Holloway, 2 P-38s. Your grandfather in one, my father in the other." Eugene's voice dropped lower. "They didn't both crash. Only Raymond did. And my father saw who shot him down." Michael's chest tightened. "Who?" "Not over the phone. Can you meet me? I have documents, photographs, things my father kept hidden his whole life." "Where are you?" "Fredericksburg. About an hour south. I'll send you the address." Eugene hesitated. "Mr. Holloway, what they did to your family, they did to mine too. Different lie, same cover-up. I think it's time the truth came out all the way." The call ended. Michael stared at his phone. "This could be a trap," Linda said. DOD trying to discredit you with false information? Or it could be real. Michael looked back at the unmarked grave. Raymond flew that mission with someone. The radio transcripts mention Archway 1. That's singular. But what if there was an Archway 2? Then the military lied about more than just where Raymond crashed. Michael took a photo of the grave, sent it to Reeves with a message. Found him. Arlington, Section 34, Row 12. Unknown service member, March 19, 1945. Her response came immediately. Don't move him. Don't tell anyone else the location. I'm filing emergency motion for DNA testing. Another text, this one from Eugene, 1247 Riverside Drive, Fredericksburg. I'll be here all day. Please come. My father made me promise to tell the truth if it ever became possible. Your article made it possible. Michael showed it to Linda. She was quiet for a long moment, looking between the grave and the phone. If we go, she said, and this is DOD setting us up, they could arrest you away from witnesses, away from Reeves. I know. But if it's real? Then we're about to find out Operation Archway was bigger than one plane and one pilot. Michael stood. And that the cover-up goes deeper than we thought. Linda pulled out her car keys. I'll drive. But we're calling Reeves on the way, and if anything feels wrong, we're leaving immediately. They stopped at Raymond's grave one more time. Michael placed his hand on the cold marble. I'll be back, he said quietly. With your name. With the truth. The wind picked up, moving through the rows of white stones. Michael turned away and followed Linda back to the car. Behind them, the unmarked grave sat silent in the morning sun, keeping its 80-year secret a little while longer. But not much longer. They called Reeves from the car. She was predictably furious. You're walking into a potential setup with no backup and no legal protection, she said through the car speakers. This is incredibly stupid. Noted, Michael said, but I'm doing it anyway. Then you're recording everything, video and audio. If this is legitimate, we need documentation. If it's a trap, we need evidence. Reeves's voice was tight with frustration. And Michael? If at any point this feels wrong, you leave immediately. I don't care if he's in the middle of a sentence. You walk out. Understood. I mean it. The DOD is under pressure right now, but they're also looking for any excuse to discredit you. Don't give them ammunition. Michael set up his phone to record video, propped it on the dashboard facing forward. The drive to Fredericksburg took 50 minutes. Neither he nor Linda spoke much. The roads were clear, traffic light for mid-morning on a weekday. Eugene's address was a small house on a quiet street near the Rappahannock River. Single story, white siding, American flag on the porch. An old Buick sat in the driveway. Looks normal, Linda said. That's what worries me. They parked on the street. Michael grabbed his phone, still recording. Together, they walked up the concrete path to the front door. Eugene answered before they knocked. He was in his late 80s, thin and stooped, wearing cardigan and slippers. His eyes were sharp, though, focused. He looked at Michael with something like recognition. You look like him, Eugene said softly. Like Raymond. Same eyes. Mr. Brennan. Come in, please. He stepped aside. I've been waiting since yesterday, since I saw the article. Been waiting 80 years, really. The house was neat, spare. Walls covered with military photos, mostly World War II era, airmen in flight jackets standing by planes. Michael recognized the P-38 silhouette in several images. Eugene led them to a dining room where a cardboard box sat on the table. Old, taped and retaped, marked in faded pen. Archway. Do not open until... The rest was scratched out. My father kept this his whole life, Eugene said, touching the box gently. Made me promise not to open it until the operation was declassified or he died, whichever came first. He passed in 2003. I've been sitting on this for 22 years, not knowing what to do with it. He looked at Michael. Then I saw your article. Saw Operation Archway mentioned, and I knew it was time. What's in the box? Linda asked. The truth about what happened that night? Eugene opened it carefully. Inside were folders, photographs, what looked like a journal. My father was Captain Howard Brennan, like I said. He and Raymond trained together, flew together. When Operation Archway was planned, they picked both of them. 2 planes, 2 pilots, redundancy in case one didn't make it. He pulled out a photograph. 2 men in flight jackets, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning at the camera. Michael recognized his grandfather immediately, younger than in the photo on his mother's mantel, but unmistakably Raymond. The other man looked similar, same build, same confident stance. They were friends, Eugene said. Real friends. Trusted each other completely. The official records don't mention a second plane, Michael said. No, they wouldn't. Eugene pulled out a folder, opened it. Inside were mission briefings similar to what Michael had found, but these had different details. Both planes took off from France. Raymond was primary, my father was backup. If anything went wrong, Dad was supposed to complete the mission and bring the intelligence home. What went wrong? Eugene's hands trembled slightly as he pulled out another document. Radio transcript, different from the ones Michael had seen. Archway 2 to Archway 1. 3 bogies, 6 o'clock high. American markings. Archway 1. Confirm American. Archway 2. Confirmed. P-47S. They're locking on. Archway 1. Braking right. Stay with me. Archway 2. They're firing. Raymond, they're firing on us! Michael's hands went numb. American planes shot them down. Not both of them. Raymond got hit. My father managed to evade, but he saw it happen. Saw the P-47s tear into Raymond's plane. Eugene's voice cracked. Saw him go down over Virginia, and then the P-47s came after my father. Why? Linda whispered. Why would American planes attack them? Eugene pulled out one more document. Stamped secret. Eyes only. Authorization from someone high in Army Air Forces command. Operation Archway. Compromise confirmed. Eliminate all assets. Mission intelligence too sensitive to risk enemy capture. Shoot down on sight. Michael read it 3 times. The words didn't change. They were ordered to kill them, he said. Our own military ordered them killed. Michael stared at the document, his hands shaking. They sent fighters to murder their own pilots. Not murder. Elimination of compromised assets. Eugene's voice was bitter. That's how they justified it. The intelligence was too valuable. If Raymond and my father were captured with those documents, the Germans would know we'd broken their codes, intercepted their plans. Better to kill 2 pilots than risk losing the war. But Raymond made it back to friendly territory, Linda said. He was over Virginia. Didn't matter. The order was shoot on sight. The P-47 pilots followed orders. Eugene pulled out a journal, leather-bound, pages yellowed. My father wrote everything down, every detail of that night. Read it. Michael opened the journal. The handwriting was tight, controlled, dated March 18, 1945, the day after the mission. They killed Raymond. I watched American fighters shoot him down over our own country. He was screaming on the radio, "I'm hit, I'm going down," and they kept firing. I tried to help, tried to draw them off, but there were 3 of them, and they were hunting us like we were the enemy. I made it back to base. Barely. When I landed, they confiscated my film, my flight logs, everything. Colonel told me the mission never happened, told me Raymond was lost at sea, told me if I ever spoke about it, I'd be court-martialed for treason. I asked about Raymond's wife, his baby. Colonel said they'd be told he died serving his country, which is true, just not the way they'll believe. Michael's vision blurred. He wiped his eyes roughly, kept reading. I can't tell anyone. Can't tell Margaret what really happened to her husband. Can't tell the truth without destroying myself and dishonoring Raymond's sacrifice. So I'll carry this. I'll live with knowing my best friend was murdered by our own side, and I'll keep my mouth shut like a good soldier. But I'm writing it down. Someday, someone needs to know. Your father lived with this for 60 years, Michael said quietly. It ate him alive. Nightmares every night. Wouldn't fly again after the war. Drank too much. Eugene closed the journal carefully. He made me promise, if the operation ever became public, if there was ever a chance to tell the truth without destroying national security, I had to speak up. For Raymond, for Margaret, for everyone they lied to. Michael pulled out his phone, made sure it was still recording. I need copies of everything, all of it. I made copies yesterday after I saw your article. Knew you'd come. Eugene pushed a manila envelope across the table. Photos, journal entries, the shoot-down order, everything my father kept. Linda was reading the authorization document, her face pale. Who signed this? Eugene pointed to a signature at the bottom. Illegible, but the typed name beneath was clear. General Theodore Vance, Army Air Forces Intelligence. Vance, Michael said. There was a Special Agent Vance outside my sister's house yesterday. His grandson, probably. The family's been military for generations. Eugene sat down heavily. They protected this secret for 80 years. They're not going to let it go without a fight. Michael's phone buzzed. Text from Garrison. DOD scheduled press conference for 2 p.m. They're going to make a statement about your story. You should be there. He showed it to Linda. They're moving fast, because they know more is coming out. She looked at Eugene. Are you willing to go public with this? To testify? I'm 88 years old. What are they going to do? Throw me in prison? Eugene's jaw set firm. My father couldn't tell the truth. But I can, and I will. Michael stood, gathered the documents. His mind was racing now, putting pieces together. The after-action report I found said Raymond's intelligence saved 3,000 lives, that they used it to hit V-2 launch sites. That part was true, Eugene said. Raymond got the intelligence out, died getting it out, and it did save lives. He paused. But the military couldn't admit how they got it without admitting they sent fighters to kill their own pilots. So they buried everything, buried Raymond, buried the truth. And your father? Lived with the lie. Got a commendation for completing the mission. Medals for valor. Eugene's voice went flat. He threw them all away. Couldn't stand to look at them, knowing what they really represented. Michael's phone rang. Reeves. Tell me you got all of that on video, she said immediately. Every word. Good. Because we're about to blow this wide open. I'm calling a press conference for noon before DOD's. We're going to present everything. Your documents, Eugene's documents, the shoot-down order. We're going to force them to admit the whole truth. They'll deny it, Linda said. They'll try. But we have documentation, eyewitness testimony from a pilot who was there, and physical evidence, Raymond's plane with bullet holes that match American .50 caliber rounds. Reeves's voice was sharp with certainty. They can't cover this up anymore. It's too big, too documented, too public. Michael looked at Eugene. Are you ready for this? The old man nodded slowly. Been ready for 22 years. Let's finish what my father started. They held the press conference at a hotel in downtown D.C. Reeves had rented a conference room, and by 11:30 it was packed. Reporters from every major outlet, cameras everywhere, the air thick with anticipation. Michael sat at a table on the small stage, Eugene beside him, Reeves on his other side. Linda was in the front row. Garrison was there too, laptop open, ready to live-blog everything. At noon exactly, Reeves stood. The room went quiet. Thank you for coming. My name is Diana Reeves, and I represent Michael Holloway, grandson of Captain Raymond Holloway, who died on March 17, 1945, during a classified operation the military has been covering up for 80 years. She laid out everything, the original documents Michael had found, the burial lie, the unmarked grave at Arlington. Then she brought out Eugene's materials, the journal, the photographs, the shoot-down order. The room erupted, reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing. Reeves held up her hand for silence. Captain Howard Brennan witnessed American fighters shoot down Captain Raymond Holloway over Virginia on direct orders from Army Air Forces Command. The military then covered up the incident, lied to the families, and buried both the truth and Captain Holloway's body in an unmarked grave. She pulled up a photo on the screen behind her, the shoot-down authorization. This is murder disguised as operational security." "That's a strong accusation," someone shouted from the back. "It's a documented fact." Reeves nodded to Eugene. "Captain Brennan's son is here. He'll tell you what his father witnessed." Eugene stood slowly, gripping the table for support. His voice was quiet but steady. "My father watched Raymond Holloway get shot down by American P-47s over American soil. He watched his best friend die screaming on the radio while following orders from his own command. And then he was threatened into silence for the rest of his life." Eugene's hands trembled. Raymond Holloway was a hero. He completed his mission. He saved thousands of lives, and his own military murdered him for it. The room exploded again. Michael sat frozen, watching it unfold. This was real now, irreversible. The truth was out. His phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. "You've made a terrible mistake." Then another. "This won't end the way you think." Reeves was still talking, fielding questions, but Michael's attention was elsewhere. Someone was threatening him. Someone who didn't want this story told. He showed the text to Linda. Her face went pale. "We need security," she whispered. But it was too late for that. The truth was already spreading, already viral. Within minutes, every news outlet would have it. By tonight, the whole country would know what the military had done. Michael looked at Eugene, at this old man who'd carried his father's secret for decades, at Reeves, fighting for justice with documents and determination, at the reporters, hungry for truth. And he thought about Raymond, buried under a stone marked unknown for 80 years. "Let them threaten," Michael said quietly. "We're not stopping now." The DoD press conference at 2 o'clock was damage control in real time. A spokesperson, a colonel Michael didn't recognize, stood at a podium with the Department of Defense seal behind him, reading from prepared remarks. "The department takes the allegations regarding Operation Archway seriously. We are conducting a comprehensive review of all materials related to Captain Holloway's service. However, we must caution against drawing conclusions from incomplete or potentially fabricated documents." "Are you calling Captain Brennan's journal fabricated?" a reporter shouted from the press pool. The colonel's jaw tightened. "We cannot verify the authenticity of documents obtained outside proper channels. What we can confirm is that Captain Raymond Holloway died honorably in service to his country during World War II. The circumstances of his death remain classified for national security reasons." "What national security is threatened by an 80-year-old operation?" Another reporter. "Classification decisions are made by appropriate authorities and remain in effect until formally reviewed." "Did American fighters shoot down Captain Holloway?" Garrison stood, notebook in hand. "Yes or no?" "I'm not at liberty to discuss—" "The shoot-down order has your predecessor's signature on it. General Theodore Vance ordered the elimination of Archway assets. Are you denying that document's authenticity?" The colonel's face flushed. "This press conference is concluded." He walked off the podium. The room erupted, reporters shouting questions, cameras following him out. Michael watched on Linda's laptop from the hotel room where Reeves had insisted they stay after the threatening texts. "They're panicking," Reeves said, pacing. That was not a confident denial. That was someone stalling for time while they figure out how to spin this. Michael's phone rang. Unknown number again. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Holloway." The voice was older, authoritative. "My name is Theodore Vance. I believe you know my grandfather's name." Michael's blood went cold. He put the phone on speaker. Reeves stopped pacing. "General Vance," Michael said carefully. "Retired general. I'm calling as a private citizen, not representing DoD." A pause. "I saw your press conference, saw my grandfather's signature on that authorization. Then you know what he did." "I know what the order says. I also know context you don't have." Vance's voice was measured, calm. "My grandfather made an impossible choice in an impossible situation. Operation Archway wasn't just about V2 intelligence. It was about protecting an entire network of Allied spies deep in German territory. If Captain Holloway or Captain Brennan had been captured alive with those documents, The Nazis would have tortured them, broken them, and rolled up every agent we had in Europe, hundreds of lives at stake. So he ordered them murdered instead. He ordered the mission terminated before compromise could occur. It was war, Mr. Holloway. People made brutal choices to win it. Michael's hands clenched into fists. Raymond made it back to Virginia. He wasn't going to be captured by Nazis. Your grandfather sent fighters to kill him over American soil. Because the P-47 pilots didn't know he'd made it back. By the time they caught up with Archway 1, they were following standing orders. Shoot on sight. Vance sighed. It was a tragedy. A terrible, unavoidable tragedy. But not murder. You're defending it. I'm explaining it. There's a difference. Another pause. Mr. Holloway, I'm calling because I want to help. I have access to files even DOD doesn't know exist. My grandfather's personal papers, kept in the family. Letters, communications, the full story of Operation Archway. Things that would provide context for what happened. Why would you share that? Because the story's already public. The cover-up is over. Now the question is whether the truth comes out piecemeal, distorted by outrage and incomplete information, or whether it comes out completely, including the reasons behind those terrible decisions. Vance's voice hardened slightly. My grandfather wasn't a villain, Mr. Holloway. He was a man trying to win a war and save as many lives as possible. He deserves to have his full story told, just like your grandfather does. Reeves was shaking her head, mouthing, "Don't trust him." But Michael hesitated. What if Vance was telling the truth? What if there was more to the story? What kind of files? Michael asked. Communications between my grandfather and British intelligence. Details about the spy network Operation Archway was protecting. Names of people who lived because Captains Holloway and Brennan died. Vance paused. I'm not asking you to forgive what happened. I'm asking you to understand it fully before you condemn it. Where are these files? My home in McLean. I can have them ready this evening if you'd like to review them. Reeves was shaking her head violently now. Linda looked terrified. But Michael thought about Eugene's journal, about Howard Brennan living with nightmares for 60 years because he couldn't tell the complete truth. I'll come, Michael said, but my attorney comes with me, and we're recording everything. Of course. I expect nothing less. Vance gave an address. 6 o'clock, and Mr. Holloway? Whatever else happened, your grandfather was genuinely heroic. The intelligence he brought back saved thousands. That part was never a lie. The call ended. That was incredibly stupid, Reeves said immediately. This could be a setup, a trap, or an attempt to manipulate you into softening your story. Or it could be the missing pieces, Michael said. Eugene's father only knew what he saw that night. He didn't know why the orders were given. If Vance has documents that explain murder? Explain war. Michael met her eyes. I need to know everything, Diana. Not just the parts that make my grandfather a victim? All of it? Linda stood. Then I'm coming too. And we're telling Garrison where we're going, when to expect us back, and what to do if we don't return. Theodore Vance's house was a colonial in McLean, understated but expensive. He answered the door himself, late 70s, gray hair cropped military short, wearing slacks and a cardigan. He looked nothing like a villain. Mr. Holloway, Miss Reeves, please come in. He led them to a study lined with bookshelves and military memorabilia. On the desk sat 3 banker's boxes. Everything I have on Operation Archway. You're welcome to photograph it all. Michael approached the boxes cautiously. Inside the first were letters, typewritten, dated 1945, marked with various classification stamps. He pulled one out carefully. It was from British M116 to General Vance, dated March 10, 1945. Network Cardinal deeply penetrated in Wehrmacht High Command, currently providing real-time intelligence on V-2 program and invasion defenses. Critical, any compromise of Cardinal courier routes will result in immediate network collapse and execution of all agents. Estimate 40+ lives at risk. Michael read it twice. The defector, Nightingale, was part of a larger spy network. The most valuable network we had, Vance said quietly. Embedded in the highest levels of Nazi command. When Nightingale was arrested by Gestapo, the entire network was at risk. If he talked, if he gave up the courier system, everyone died. British intelligence and my grandfather agreed. No one else could know about Cardinal, not even the pilots sent to recover Nightingale's materials. Raymond and Howard flew into that without knowing the real stakes, Linda said. Compartmentalization, standard security protocol. Vance pulled out another document. After Nightingale was arrested, my grandfather received this. It was a telegram from M16. Nightingale broke under interrogation. Gestapo knows about courier operation. Abort all pickups immediately. Anyone carrying Cardinal materials is compromised and cannot be allowed enemy capture. Michael's hands shook as he held the telegram. So when Raymond and Howard took off, the mission was already blown. The Gestapo knew. They were waiting for whoever came to pick up Nightingale's materials. Vance's voice was heavy. My grandfather sent the shoot-down order to prevent your grandfather from being captured with documents that would have destroyed the entire spy network. It wasn't about the V2 intelligence. It was about protecting 40 agents embedded in Nazi command. Did those agents survive? Reeves asked quietly. 38 of them. 2 were executed before the network could be warned, but the rest lived because the Gestapo never got their hands on Captain Holloway or Captain Brennan. Vance pulled out one more document, a list of names with notations beside each. These are the Cardinal agents. After the war, they provided testimony at Nuremberg. 3 of them later became ministers in the West German government. 2 wrote books about their experiences. They lived full lives because 2 American pilots died. Michael stared at the names. Real people, real lives saved. Raymond still died over Virginia, he said, after he made it back. The P-47s could have let him land. The pilots didn't know he'd made it to friendly territory. They were tracking him from France, following shoot-on-sight orders. By the time they caught up, Vance stopped. It was confusion, fog of war, terrible luck, not malice. But your grandfather covered it up afterward. Lied to the family, buried Raymond without a name. Yes. Vance didn't flinch from it. He did. Because admitting what happened meant admitting the Cardinal network existed, admitting we'd sacrificed our own pilots to protect British spies, admitting the moral calculus that values 40 lives over 2. He met Michael's eyes. My grandfather carried that guilt until he died, wrote letters to your grandmother he never sent, tried to get Raymond recognized posthumously, but it would have required explaining the operation. So he buried it, buried his guilt with it. Reeves was photographing documents rapidly. These don't excuse the cover-up. No, they don't, but they explain it. Vance sat down heavily. Mr. Holloway, I'm not asking you to forgive what was done to your family. I'm asking you to tell the complete story. Raymond Holloway died a hero in a war where heroes sometimes got killed by their own side because the alternative was worse. That's a tragedy, but it's not a crime. Michael thought about the unmarked grave, about Margaret's flowers drifting on empty waves, about his father, who died never knowing the truth. The crime was the lie, Michael said, not the decision in 1945, the lie that lasted 80 years. Yes, Vance said simply, that was the crime. And I'm trying to help you correct it now. Michael and Reeves spent 3 hours photographing Vance's documents. By 9 o'clock, they had everything, communications with MI6, the list of Cardinal agents, even letters General Vance had written to Margaret Holloway but never sent. One letter, dated 1952, made Michael's chest tight. Dear Mrs. Holloway, your husband died completing a mission that saved countless lives. I wish I could tell you the details. I wish I could explain why his sacrifice required such secrecy. Please know that Raymond was the bravest man I ever commanded, and his death haunts me still. The letter was unsigned, never mailed, just kept in a box for 70 years. My grandfather tried 5 times to get Operation Archway declassified, Vance said as they prepared to leave. Each time, British intelligence blocked it. Cardinal sources were still sensitive, some agents still alive. He died in 1989, still carrying that guilt. When did the last Cardinal agent die? Reeves asked. 2019. That's when declassification became possible. But by then, the bureaucracy had calcified around the secret. Easier to keep it buried than explain why it was hidden so long. Michael gathered the photographed documents. I'm still publishing this, all of it. I know. That's why I'm helping. Vance walked them to the door. Your grandfather deserves his name on that grave. He deserves the truth. But so does mine, the context that explains why impossible choices were made. Back at Linda's house, Michael and Reeves compiled everything. The original documents Michael had found, Eugene's materials, Vance's files. Together they told a complete story, tragic, complicated, human. This changes the narrative, Reeves said, scrolling through photos on her laptop. The DoD wasn't just covering up to save face. They were protecting an intelligence operation that saved lives. That doesn't excuse lying to my grandmother for 80 years? No, but it makes it more understandable. She looked at him. Michael, if you publish everything, including Vance's materials, the story becomes less about military corruption and more about the fog of war, about impossible choices. Some people will see that as you weakening your position. Some people will be wrong. Michael thought about Raymond's letter to Margaret, about Howard Brennan's nightmares, about General Vance's unsent letters. The truth is complicated. That's why it needs to be told completely. His phone buzzed. Text from Garrison, DoD just announced they're declassifying Operation Archway. Full document released tomorrow morning. You did it. Michael stared at the message. They'd won. After 80 years, the military was finally admitting the truth. Another text from Garrison. They're also requesting Captain Holloway's remains be exhumed for proper burial with full honors. Pentagon ceremony. Presidential attendance possible. They want to make this right, Linda said, reading over his shoulder. Publicly? Or they want to control the narrative before we publish Vance's materials, Reeves said. Get ahead of the complexity, frame it as a tragedy rather than a cover-up. Michael's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered warily. Mr. Holloway, this is General Patricia Rhodes, Secretary of the Army. Her voice was formal, measured. I'm calling to personally apologize for the treatment your family received regarding Captain Holloway's death. We failed you. We failed him. And we're going to make it right. How? Full declassification of Operation Archway, as you've already heard. Exhumation and reburial at Arlington with full military honors. Posthumous Medal of Honor for your grandfather's actions. And, she paused, a formal apology to your family, delivered publicly, acknowledging the decades of deception. When? We can move as quickly as you're comfortable with. But Mr. Holloway, I need to ask, are you planning to publish additional materials? We've seen reports you met with Theodore Vance, so they'd been watching. Michael wasn't surprised. I have documents that provide context for the shoot-down order. British intelligence, spy networks, the lives at stake. I'm publishing everything. Silence. Then, that's your right. But I'd ask you to consider letting DoD include those materials in our official declassification. Present the complete picture together, rather than in competing narratives. Why would I trust you to do that? Because we're trying to do the right thing now, even though we've failed to do it for 80 years? Rhodes' voice softened slightly. Your grandfather was a hero, Mr. Holloway. He saved thousands of lives, both the American soldiers who would have died in V-2 attacks and the Allied agents who would have been exposed if he'd been captured. He deserves to be honored with the full truth, not a sanitized version. We agree on that. Michael looked at Reeves, who was listening on speaker. She nodded slowly. I want it in writing, Michael said. A guarantee that every document gets declassified. No redactions beyond names of living intelligence sources. Complete transparency. Done. I'll have the agreement drafted tonight. And I want Eugene Brennan included in the ceremony. Howard Brennan's name cleared publicly. He lived with nightmares because your predecessors threatened him into silence. Also done. Captain Brennan will be recognized for his service and his courage in speaking the truth." Rhodes paused. "This is going to be uncomfortable for the military, Mr. Holloway. Admitting we killed our own pilot, even with justification. Admitting we lied for 80 years. But it's necessary, and it's right. When's the ceremony?" 2 weeks. That gives us time to exhume Captain Holloway, conduct proper forensic identification, and prepare Arlington for a state funeral." Her voice became formal again. "He'll receive every honor we failed to give him in 1945. You have my word." The call ended. Michael sat in silence, trying to process everything. 2 weeks. 2 weeks until his grandfather's name was restored, his sacrifice acknowledged, the truth finally public. "You did it," Linda said quietly. "You actually did it." But Michael didn't feel victorious. He felt exhausted, emptied out. He thought about Margaret, who died believing her husband was in the ocean, about his father, who joined the Air Force to honor a lie, about 80 years of flowers scattered in the wrong place. "It's too late," he said. "Grandma never knew. Dad never knew. We're correcting the record, but for what? They're all gone." "Not all of them." Linda pulled out her phone, showed him the screen. "Uncle Eugene is still alive. He's 91, but he's alive. And when he sees Raymond's name restored, when he hears the truth acknowledged, that's for him. That's closure for the last living person who knew Raymond." Michael hadn't thought about that. Eugene Holloway, Raymond's younger brother, the last connection to the man who died in that cockpit. He'd spent 91 years believing the ocean story, learning the truth now at his age with his heart condition. "We need to tell him carefully," Michael said, "in person, not through the news." "Tomorrow," Linda said, "we'll drive to his nursing home tomorrow and tell him everything. Give him time to process before the ceremony." Reeves was typing on her laptop. "I'm drafting a statement for when DOD announces the declassification. We control the family's response, make sure it's measured and dignified. No triumphalism. Just acknowledgement that justice, however delayed, matters." Michael's phone buzzed again. Email from Theodore Vance. "Thank you for telling the complete story. My grandfather would have been grateful, and your grandfather would have been proud." Michael stared at the message for a long moment, then closed his phone. He was too tired to think about whether Vance's grandfather deserved gratitude, whether the impossible choices of 1945 justified the decades of lies that followed. All he knew was that Raymond Holloway would finally have his name back, would finally be brought home properly. And that had to be enough. The next morning, they drove to the nursing home where Eugene Holloway lived. He was in the common room watching morning news when Michael and Linda arrived. His face was thin, his hands trembled slightly, but his eyes were still sharp. "Michael," he said, voice rough with age. "Linda, I saw you on the news. Something about your grandfather." Michael knelt beside Eugene's wheelchair. "Uncle Eugene, we found him. We found Grandpa Raymond." The old man's face went still. "Found him?" "He wasn't in the ocean. He crashed in Virginia. We found his plane, his body. He's been at Arlington all these years in an unmarked grave." Michael took Eugene's hand gently. "But we're bringing him home properly now. In 2 weeks, full military honors." Eugene's eyes filled with tears. His hand gripped Michael's with surprising strength. "Raymond," he whispered, "my brother. He's really coming home?" "Yes, and Uncle Eugene, there's more. He died a hero, saved thousands of lives. The military covered it up for 80 years, but we're making them tell the truth now." "He always wanted to matter," Eugene said, his voice breaking. "Always wanted to do something important. And he did?" "He did. He really did." The old man wept then, quiet tears running down his weathered face. Michael stayed kneeling beside him, holding his hand until the tears stopped. "Can I see him?" Eugene asked finally. "At the ceremony?" "You'll be there. Front row. We'll make sure of it." Eugene nodded slowly. "Good. That's good. I need to tell him—" He stopped, struggled for words. I need to tell him I never forgot, that I kept his picture, that I told my children about him, that he mattered to us, even when we thought he was gone." "He knows," Linda said softly. "I think he knows." The Department of Defense released the declassified Operation Archway files on a Thursday morning. 3,000 pages, mission briefings, radio transcripts, intelligence assessments, and a full accounting of the shoot-down order and its justification. The media response was immediate and fractured. Some outlets praised Raymond's heroism. Others focused on the friendly fire tragedy. A few accused the military of war crimes. Nobody could agree on the narrative because the truth was too complicated for easy headlines. Michael watched it all from Linda's living room, his phone muted, trying to process the flood of information. The files confirmed everything: the spy network, the impossible choice, the 40 Allied agents who'd lived because Raymond died. But they also confirmed the cover-up. 80 years of deliberate deception, documented in internal memos that showed senior officials knew exactly what they were doing and why. "Public opinion is split," Garrison said, calling that afternoon. "About 40% see your grandfather as a hero killed by tragic circumstances. 40% see him as a victim of military murder. 20% don't know what to think." "What do you think?" Michael asked. Garrison was quiet for a moment. "I think war is messier than we want it to be. I think your grandfather did something incredibly brave, and I think the people who ordered him killed were trying to save other lives. And I think lying about it for 80 years was wrong, even if the original decision was defensible." He paused. "There's no clean answer here, Michael. Just tragedy and hard choices." That night, Michael couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Raymond in that cockpit, wounded and dying, knowing he'd made it back to friendly territory, but not understanding why American planes were shooting at him. Had he known? In those final moments, had he understood? Michael got up at 3 a.m, drove to Arlington National Cemetery. The gates were closed, but he parked outside and walked to the fence, looking toward where Section 34 would be. Somewhere in that darkness was the grave marked "Unknown Service Member." Not for much longer. His phone buzzed. Text from Eugene Brennan. "My father would have been glad you did this. He carried the guilt of surviving when Raymond didn't. Thank you for giving both of them peace." Michael wrote back, "The ceremony is in 9 days. Will you be strong enough to attend? I'll be there if I have to crawl. This is what I've waited for since your article, to see the truth acknowledged publicly. 9 days. 9 days until they exhumed Raymond's body, until forensics confirmed what Michael already knew, until his grandfather finally got the burial he deserved." The exhumation happened on a cold morning with news helicopters circling overhead. Michael wasn't allowed to be present, DoD rules about forensic integrity, but Reeves was there as family representative, and she called him with updates. "They've opened the grave. Remains are consistent with crash victim. They're taking samples for a DNA comparison, but the wedding ring is here. Engraving matches." Michael closed his eyes. The ring? His grandmother's ring that Raymond had carried into battle and death. How long for DNA confirmation? 3 days, maybe 4. But Michael, they found something else. A second set of dog tags in the grave. Not Raymond's. Someone named Mitchell. Michael's blood went cold. "What?" "Robert Mitchell, Lieutenant, Army Air Forces. Dog tags dated 1943. Reeves's voice was tight. "There's another body in this grave. Or part of one. They're not sure yet." "Jesus Christ. Who is Robert Mitchell?" "I don't know, but DoD is pulling his files now. This grave might not just be about Raymond anymore." Michael hung up, immediately called Garrison. "There's another body in Raymond's grave. Robert Mitchell, 1943. Can you search your archives?" 20 minutes later, Garrison called back. "Robert Mitchell, P-51 pilot, reported missing in action September 1943 over France. Never found. Family was told he was lost over the English Channel." His voice was grim. "Michael, if his remains are in that grave with Raymond, then the military did this more than once. Found bodies, buried them in unmarked graves, lied to multiple families." We need to be careful how we report this. We don't have confirmation yet. But if it's true, Operation Archway wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern. Garrison was silent. Then, I'll start digging into other missing pilots from World War II. See if there are more cases where the official story doesn't match the evidence. Michael thought about all the families who'd scattered flowers in wrong oceans, who'd believed lies for generations. How many other unmarked graves were there? How many other Robert Mitchells? His phone rang again. Reeves. DNA on Raymond is confirmed. It's definitely him. But Mitchell, they found partial remains. Looks like he was originally buried elsewhere, then moved to this grave later. Maybe 1945, around the same time as Raymond. Why would they bury two bodies together? Efficiency? Secrecy? I don't know, but DOD is scrambling. They're checking records for other unidentified burials at Arlington during that period. She paused. Michael, this is getting bigger than just your grandfather. I know. Are you ready for that? Because if there are more families like yours, then they deserve the truth too. Michael's voice was firm. All of them, however many there are. The Robert Mitchell revelation broke 2 days before the scheduled ceremony. Garrison published it in the Washington Post, and within hours it was everywhere. Another military cover-up, another family lied to for decades. Mitchell's daughter, now 82, gave a tearful interview saying she'd spent her whole life believing her father was at the bottom of the English Channel. She'd never had a grave to visit, never had closure. Now she learned he'd been at Arlington the entire time, buried with a stranger under a marker that said, unknown. The DOD announced they were conducting a comprehensive review of all unidentified burials from World War II. Preliminary searches had found at least 6 more cases where official records didn't match physical evidence. 6 more families. 6 more lies. Michael watched the news coverage with a growing sense of horror and purpose. This wasn't just about Raymond anymore. It was about accountability for systematic deception that had spanned decades and affected hundreds of families. His phone rang. General Rhodes. Mr. Holloway, I want you to know we're taking this seriously. Every case, every family. We're going to identify every unidentified burial, contact every family, and make this right. How long has DOD known about this? Silence. Then, we didn't know. Not at this level. The files were fragmented, poorly maintained. Nobody was looking at World War II casualties systematically until your grandfather's case forced us to. That's not good enough. I know. You're right. Rhodes's voice was heavy. We failed these families. We failed our duty, and we're going to spend however long it takes fixing it. But Mr. Holloway, the ceremony for Captain Holloway is still happening. He's still getting full honors. This doesn't change that. What about Lieutenant Mitchell? His family is being notified. We'll hold a separate ceremony for him with full honors. His daughter will be there. Another pause. Would you be willing to attend? As someone who understands what she's going through? Michael thought about it. About an 82-year-old woman learning her father had been buried in secret for 80 years. About the parallels between her loss and his family's. Yeah, he said, I'll be there. Thank you. And Mr. Holloway, I want you to know that what you did, exposing this, it matters. It's uncomfortable for us. It's painful, but it's necessary. These families deserved better, and because of you, they're getting it now. The call ended. Michael sat in silence, trying to process everything. He'd started this journey looking for answers about his grandfather. Now he'd uncovered something much larger, a systemic failure that had affected dozens, maybe hundreds of families. Linda came in with coffee. You okay? No, but I think that's appropriate. He took the coffee, didn't drink it. Grandma died believing Dad's father was in the ocean. Mitchell's daughter spent 82 years believing the same thing about her dad. How many other people are out there right now, believing lies because the military found it easier to bury the truth than explain it? You're giving them answers now. That's what matters. Is it? Answers can't bring back the years, can't give Mitchell's daughter her childhood back, growing up with a father who was actually 30 miles away the whole time. Michael's voice cracked. We're correcting the record, but we can't undo the damage. No, but you can prevent it from continuing. Linda sat beside him. Every family DOD contacts now, every body they identify, every lie they admit. That's because you refuse to let this stay buried. That's worth something. Michael wanted to believe that. He wanted to believe that justice delayed was still justice, that truth mattered even when it came too late. But mostly, he just felt tired. 3 days before the ceremony, Michael received a package. No return address, unmarked box delivered by courier. Inside was a letter and a photograph. The photo showed 2 pilots standing by a P-38, arms around each other's shoulders. Raymond and another man Michael didn't recognize, both smiling, both young and alive. The letter was handwritten, shaky script. Mr. Holloway, my name is Vincent Shaw. I served with your grandfather in 1945. I was the crew chief for his P-38. When he took off on Operation Archway, I was the last person he spoke to. He told me, if I don't come back, tell Margaret I love her. Tell my kid I was thinking about them. I never got to tell Margaret, never knew what happened to your grandfather after that night, just that he didn't return. I'm 98 years old now, not long for this world. But I saw the news, saw they found Raymond. I wanted you to know he was thinking about family at the end, that he loved them, that he was brave. I kept this photo all these years. It belongs with him now. God bless you for giving Raymond his name back. Vincent Shaw. Michael read the letter 3 times, then called the number on the envelope. An elderly man answered. Mr. Shaw, this is Michael Holloway. Michael. The voice was weak, thready. Thank you for calling. Wasn't sure you would. The photo? The letter. Thank you. Raymond was a good man, best pilot I ever worked with. Shaw coughed, recovered. I'm glad they're finally telling the truth. Glad his family knows what he did. Will you come to the ceremony? Can't travel anymore? Too sick. But I'll be watching, and I'll be thinking about Raymond, about that last conversation. Another cough. Tell them he was brave, Michael. Tell them he died doing something that mattered. I will. After the call ended, Michael stared at the photograph for a long time. Raymond looked so young, so full of life. Impossible to imagine him crushed in a cockpit, dying alone over American soil while following orders from his own command. But that's what had happened, and now, finally, the world would know. The morning of the ceremony was cold and clear, the kind of March day that felt like a memory of winter. Michael stood in Section 34 of Arlington National Cemetery, watching as honor guard positioned themselves around the flag-draped casket. Raymond Holloway was finally coming home. The grave was no longer marked unknown service member. A new headstone had been placed overnight, white marble, his full name, rank, dates of birth, and death. And beneath that, Operation Archway, Medal of Honor. His sacrifice saved thousands. Eugene sat in the front row of chairs, oxygen tube in his nose, wrapped in blankets despite the spring sun. He hadn't taken his eyes off the casket since arriving. 91 years old, and he was finally getting to say goodbye to the brother he'd lost when he was 11. Eugene Brennan was there too, in a wheelchair, holding his father's journal. The leather was cracked, the pages yellowed, but he clutched it like a lifeline. Linda sat beside Michael, gripping his hand. She'd been crying since they arrived, quiet tears that wouldn't stop. The crowd was larger than Michael had expected. Veterans, historians, journalists, and families, including Robert Mitchell's daughter Eleanor, who'd asked to attend. She sat in the second row, 82 years old, and finally able to mourn her father properly. General Rhodes approached the podium, Army dress uniform immaculate, face grave. We are here today to honor Captain Raymond Holloway, United States Army Air Forces, who died on March 17, 1945, completing a classified mission that saved thousands of Allied lives. For 80 years, his sacrifice went unacknowledged. For 80 years, his family was told a lie. Today, we correct that injustice. She paused, looked directly at Eugene. To the family of Captain Holloway, We failed you. We failed Raymond. We chose secrecy over truth, operational security over basic human decency. No apology can undo 80 years of deception, but we offer it nonetheless, with the solemn promise that we will do better." The honor guard fired 3 volleys. The sound echoed across the cemetery, sharp and final. A bugler played taps, each note hanging in the cold air. 2 officers folded the flag from Raymond's casket with precise movements. They presented it to Eugene, who took it with trembling hands and pressed it against his chest. "My brother," Eugene whispered. "My brother came home." Michael's throat closed. He couldn't speak, could barely breathe. This was what he'd fought for, this moment, this acknowledgement, this truth finally spoken aloud. Rhodes continued. "Captain Holloway volunteered for Operation Archway, knowing the risks. He successfully recovered critical intelligence regarding German 5-2 rocket operations. That intelligence led to preemptive strikes that prevented a planned attack on Allied staging areas in March 1945. Conservative estimates suggest his actions saved at least 3,000 American and British lives." She pulled out a document. "It is my honor to posthumously award Captain Raymond Holloway the Medal of Honor for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life, above and beyond the call of duty." The crowd stood. Cameras flashed, but Michael was focused on Eugene, on the old man clutching that folded flag and weeping silently. "Additionally," Rhodes said, "we recognize Captain Howard Brennan, who flew with Captain Holloway that night and witnessed the tragic circumstances of his death. Captain Brennan carried the truth for 60 years, unable to speak it due to classified restrictions. We honor his courage and his loyalty to his fellow pilot." Eugene Brennan raised his father's journal in acknowledgement. People applauded. After the ceremony, people lingered. Veterans thanked Michael for bringing the truth to light. Historians asked questions about the declassified documents. Eleanor Mitchell hugged him, 2 strangers connected by parallel grief. Eugene was wheeled to the new headstone. He touched Raymond's name with trembling fingers. "We used to play catch," he said quietly, "before the war. He promised he'd teach me to fly when he got back." His voice broke. He never got back. But now he's home. Michael knelt beside the wheelchair. "He'd be proud of you." Living 91 years, raising a family, keeping his memory alive. "I told my children about him. My grandchildren kept his picture on the mantel." Eugene looked at Michael. "But I told them the wrong story. I told them the ocean. You told them the story you were given. That's not your fault. Still feels like I failed him. You didn't. You kept him alive in memory. That's what matters." Eugene reached into his coat, pulled out something wrapped in cloth. "This is for you. Found it in my mother's things after she died. Never knew what to do with it." Michael unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a pocket watch, tarnished with age. Engraved on the back, "To Raymond, from Margaret. Count the hours until you're home." Michael's vision blurred. "Uncle Eugene, it's yours now. You're the one who brought him home. You're the one who counted the hours." Eugene pressed it into Michael's hands. 29,200 days. That's how long it took. But you did it. That night, Michael returned to Arlington alone. The cemetery was closed, but he climbed the fence like he had weeks ago, made his way through the darkness to Section 34. Raymond's new headstone gleamed white in the moonlight. Fresh flowers covered the grave, dozens of bouquets left by strangers who'd been moved by his story. Michael sat in the grass, exhausted and emptied out. He'd done what he'd set out to do. The truth was public. Raymond's name was restored. Justice, however delayed, had arrived. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like closure, bittersweet and incomplete. "I wish Grandma could have been here," Michael said to the stone. "She deserved to know. Dad deserved to know." His voice cracked. "I'm sorry it took so long." The wind moved through the cemetery, rustling the flowers. In the distance, a car passed on the road. Normal sounds, ordinary evening. The world kept turning, indifferent to truth or lies or 80 years of grief. Michael pulled out the pocket watch, held it up to catch the moonlight. "Count the hours until you're home." "You're home now," he whispered. Finally. He stayed there until dawn, keeping vigil for a grandfather he'd never met but would never forget. When the sun rose over Arlington, turning the white stones gold, Michael finally stood and walked back to his car. Behind him, Raymond Holloway rested under his own name, his sacrifice acknowledged, his truth finally told. Some lies, once buried, stay buried forever, but not this one, not anymore.